morning, world. Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon.
Great morning. It's a great morning. Why wouldn't you sing? Great morning, everyone. As you can see, I got dressed up a little bit today. Underneath, not so much. I think it's a great idea in the early morning during your rise ups to just change things up, So every now and then I'll go running and I'll wear something different. I didn't wear this morning, but you know what? I probably need to. Really excited today. Excited at the possibilities of greatness today. I locked into something yesterday and I'm going to share some of it with you today, but just really, really excited to see people rising up in the face of adversity, which is where the discipline muscle is really, truly built. Big respect to everybody that's following the 15 days. Getting a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people are going through some struggle, but in a good way. Just unveiling and recognizing just how deep the layers of bullshit can go. How much we get in our way of the amazing opportunities to just thrive and move forward. Everybody's invited to that party. Everybody. And the only person that is checking IDs and sending people packing is you. So great respect for everybody that is contending today. And you might not be all in. You might be half in. You might be using half of your ass today instead of all of your ass. That's better than 90% of the world. So big props to you as well. Blessed day full of potential and possibilities today. Always say that in the morning. That's part of my ritual. Today I accept the possibilities of greatness. I'm so pumped about this idea this morning. First of all, it was beautiful and sunny out this morning. Every now and then the universe gives you a gift and you go out running and it's not like snowing in May or sleeting, which is another blessing of sorts because it gives you the opportunity to build some hustle muscle and some discipline. But today was beautiful. I just ran by the water and it was like sunny out and I was just like, what's up? I felt like everything was in support of me. Total fantasy. Because if my mind was in the wrong place, I would have seen it totally different, So I come today with an open heart, looking for the upside of the downside, looking for the possibilities of greatness, not even aware of the other side. In fact, the other side, the downside, actually facilitates the upside today. So I feel so blessed that I have the ability, the vision to see that. And I'm also blessed to be here with you to practice this stuff, to take something that I think is really, really valuable that's helped shift me and offer it to you. So I call this Rise Up today. Dear Mr. Fantasy, play us a tune. Not play us a tune. It's called Dear Mr. Fantasy. Love this one. So pumped about this. I'm going to start off with a little quote that I kind of repurposed from a couple others. It's where my thought came from because I'm very often getting challenged with all this positivity. When you break away from the herd tries to reel you back into their reality. So I wrote this. I said, how disappointed they are to find that your fantasy is greater than their reality. Boom. If it wasn't expensive, I'd drop the mic. Think about that. How disappointed are people to find out that your fantasy is greater than their reality? And what that does is that kind of brings up the topic, like, what is fantasy? What is reality? I'm going to challenge the norm today that they're kind of the same thing. Whatever it is that we decide is reality is really a fantasy that we've just locked into believing, and we've created emotions and feelings behind it. So let's just rock this. I often receive challenges. In fact, I mentioned this one the other day. I received challenges from listeners from the podcast or Facebook. When you rise up, a lot of people try to bring you back down. It's like a balloon that rises up. Everybody tries to pull it down. And I get it. I used to be the pull down guy. I often receive challenges from listeners that insist that my thoughts, keyword my thoughts, right? My thoughts and views on life are just simply a fantasy and that I should turn on the TV and see what's really going on. Interesting, right? It's interesting, first of all, when we decide that other people should do what we think. That's a perception, but at the same time, emotional intelligence, emotional management versus mismanagement. Breathe, right? So I think to myself, you know what? You're right. They just told me that I'm living in a fantasy world and I ought to turn the TV on and get back down to reality. So what I say in my mind and then I say to them is I say, you're right. But then I think to myself, but what I mean is that's your right, not mine. Everybody has the ability to have their right. That's what it means when you go, you're right. It doesn't mean that we're right. It doesn't mean that I've bought into it. Because I never buy into anything until test it. Everything's just a theory until I test it. Once I decide something is a fact, I've actually time tested it. So you're right, but that's your right, not mine. In my right, or in my fantasy, I think that it's turning the TV off that helps us see what's really going on. But that's my right, that's your right, and it's your right to have your right. I love that. See, the idea of fantasy is something that thrives on the fact that anything can happen, any kind of an energy, anything's possible. That's kind of in the realm of fantasy. And I just love living in fantasy. But what I'm going to do today is show you that there's no difference between your reality and my fantasy. A reality is just a fantasy that you've determined is true for whatever reason. And you're allowed to. So either side, good or bad, is a fantasy. So which fantasy do you choose? There's always an upside and a downside. There's always a positive and a negative. And every morning when we boot up, the reason why I rise up and do my gratitude and I do that whole process that we go over, I believe in step 4 of the 15 days, the whole purpose of that is to create my fantasy, to bend my reality. I have a choice. I can take the red pill or the blue pill. So this is the challenge that I give you today. So which fantasy do you choose? So feelings and emotions are the end product of past experience. So think about your feelings and emotions. Those are a byproduct, the end product of past experience. And if you're feeling and emoting the same way every day, what it means is that nothing new is happening in your life, which means you're not open, you're not allowing anything new to happen in your life. So naturally, you're just thinking in the past. Your reality is basically being dictated by your program, your past. And I've lived most of my life like that, so I dig it. If you think that your thoughts are attached to reality, if you actually look at your thoughts and think that they're attached to reality and your reality is in the past, what it does is that you reaffirm. So it's the idea of you thinking that your thoughts and feelings are attached to reality. Now, how many times have we talked about the fact that whenever you feel things like fear, anger, concern, worry, anxiety, and all that stuff, if you really stop and breathe and look at it and analyze it, you'll see that it's attached to something that's uncontrollable. But if you attach it to a reality, then what happens is you reaffirm those feelings as reality, and then you keep thinking of them. So if you're kind of stuck in this belief system that things are not good right now, hopefully that'll help you. So all we need to do is recognize that both negative and positive thoughts and feelings of yourself both exist equally in the realm of fantasy and reality. So they're omnipresent. There's a duality always. And whenever you're in a good mood, you're focusing on the good. Whenever you're in the bad mood, you're focusing on the bad. But a really, really good place to be, which is why when people say, "How are you, Dragon?" I say, "It's all good." It's a great place to be in the middle where you can appreciate and see that there's good and bad always, that duality. But you get to choose if that overall is a good or a bad thing. So neither carries more evidence, either side, the positive or the negative, because it's a fantasy that you're actually in perception of a fantasy, both sides, the negative and the positive. So neither of them carries more evidence of being real until your mind decides which one to lock onto as real. Look at something like religion. If you truly believe in religion and you believe that it is what it is, but somebody else believes in something else, it's interesting to look at that. And it's interesting also how we try to inflect and push our reality onto other people. If I ever find myself trying to push my reality onto you, then I assume that you're living in a fantasy and I'm living in a reality. Pretty interesting stuff, right? So once you decide on the intention and the reality of your choice, you develop feelings. So this is the way it works, right? You decide on an intention of what you deem as a reality. And then what happens is you develop the feelings and emotions that support it. And then what happens next is your body and your mind get in sync, that mind-body connection. Your body and your mind get in sync, and they both support this idea that that's the reality. So how cool is that? You know, you get to decide which intention. You can actually decide which intention you desire today. Now we're stepping into this realm where we can create our own fantasy. How cool is that? And by the way, if you're in a perception that fantasy is not real, all that's happening right there is you've just decided because your body and your mind sunk on something and called it real. And the only time you can perceive that somebody else lives in fantasy is because you think that you're living in reality. But if you ask the person that lives in fantasy, maybe you're living in fantasy. Fun stuff to think about. How cool is that? You can actually decide which intention that you desire and back it up with thoughts and emotions to make it real. So I'm a big fan of Joe Dispenza. Awesome guy. He was in The Secret and all that stuff. If you never heard of him, just go look him up on YouTube and just watch some of his mind stuff. What he says that totally vibes with me is he says, as we build a personality around what we've deemed as a reality. Now think about what it means to build a personality. That's not just your mind. That's when you get the full body, mind buy-in. That's how you build a personality. And when you build a personality around it, it becomes your personal reality. I mean, come on. Oh, that's so good. So we choose the fantasy every day. So what is your fantasy? Are you happy or sad? Now that we know that both of them are a fantasy, are you happy or sad? Is life full of blessings or challenges? Are you a successful person or are you a loser today? All I want you to know is that they're both equally, as I call, phantasmic, meaning full of fantasy. Both of them. Whatever it is that you've decided is reality, in another reality, it's a fantasy. Your ability to identify that you're living in a fantasy is a really crucial step. And then the next step is to identify that you create your fantasy. So now we start to say, what kind of a fantasy do I want to live in today? And then support it. As you make your way through today and you rise up, what I recommend is that you start to do is say, Dear Mr. Fantasy, play us a tune. Something that will make us all happy. That's what I heard. I heard that song again. What a great, go listen to that song. You're Mr. Fantasy. You actually create it. So then you find yourself enjoying the fruits of that fantasy where you begin to shift your reality into gratitude, into serving others. This is the whole concept of the 15 days is you're creating your own reality. You're creating your bus that you're going to trust and you're going to move forward with this bus. What's the difference between that and anything else anybody's doing, happy or sad? You're creating and sculpting your own reality, your own fantasy, and what are the perks of that? Oh my God. Well, in my fantasy world, on Planet Dragon, I've been practicing this fantasy for so long. Every day I go through the same fantasy, and I'm not turning the news on in my fantasy. And I'm not saying that if you are turning the news on, that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's your fantasy. Just inviting you to recognize that. So on Planet Dragon, I can't lose because losing is an ingredient for winning. In my fantasy, people aren't mean. They're just challenging and they're obstacles, and obstacles are the way. The universe sends mean people and struggle and challenge to me because the universe is in full favor of that. We are not victims of circumstances, and our circumstances are there to help us grow and achieve greatness. And as I said, the universe is in full favor of my success on Planet Dragon. And you guys can create your own planet today. The universe is in full favor of our success and only sends challenges and struggle to reaffirm that idea. If you're not facing struggle and challenge, it means that you're not in play. Because as soon as you get in play, you're going to be challenged. God only prunes the branches that he wants to see grow. Everything that you desire is mysteriously on the other side of a pile of poopy. So if you don't see any poopy in front of you today, you're probably not even showing up on the map. Think about that. Total fantasy, Planet Dragon. Made it all up, and you can make yours up too. So it's just my preference that I choose over the other fantasies that I spent most of my life living. And I go into that, in the book a lot about what the fantasy that I used to believe in. So it's just my preference over those fantasy, and it helps me come to you today and every day and pass on some candy. So what I do every day as I bring people into the greatness factory and churn out extraordinary people, which is my intention, I'm just basically handing out candy. Now, I got the concept of candy from, I watched a master class. I don't know if you guys are into master class, but it's awesome. Because I'm writing a book, I watched the master class that Malcolm Gladwell, best-selling author, did. And he refers to the little treats and digressions and facts and footnotes in his book as candy. He offers people some candy, and I just love that idea. He loves to break from his own flow and offers his readers, us, an unexpected treat that doesn't necessarily serve as a function for the part you were reading, but acts as a little interesting treat after you've consumed his stuff, like a little bit of a dessert. And it just makes you smile. So here's my focus today. Let's consider this day to live in a fantasy world where we experience gratitude and hand out some candy. As a result of experiencing that gratitude, it gives us the ability to do the greatest thing in the world, and that is be in service and be a solution for someone else. And what I mean is give some candy out to people, right? So here's a challenge. Now that you're thinking, now that you're with me and we're firing off and we're in that little 5% of your conscious day, the next time somebody challenges you and tells you that your perception of the world is a fantasy and shares their opinion on things and think that things are not good, or maybe they encourage you to accept their things, just smile and just be aware and recognize from a place of empathy, an empathetic heart. Just smile and recognize that they're just sold on their fantasy and they have every right to do it. That's why I always say you're right, and it is your right to have that fantasy. And behind that smile that you have, you carry this little secret that this is a great day and that you're exciting and expecting the possibilities of greatness. So great morning, friends. Stay thirsty. I love and appreciate you. We'll be together for years because I got a lot of this stuff coming. Love and appreciate you. Have a great day.